Hi there if you're over 60. Imagine this. It's early morning, the sun is just beginning to rise. Soft light spills through your window and everything feels peaceful. You reach for your toothbrush and it slips from your hand. You bend down to pick it up and your fingers feel a bit clumsy. Maybe you think I must still be half asleep. But then as you try to button your shirt, your hands don't quite cooperate. It's still you, still your body. And yet, something feels slightly off. And you know what? That might just be your brain's first quiet warning. A small shift in coordination, like trouble writing, missing your mark when reaching, or momentarily forgetting how to spell a simple word, isn't always just getting older. Sometimes it's your brain saying, I'm not getting enough blood flow, and I need you to notice. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I'm doing here. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your part of the world. Now sit back, maybe turn on a fan for some gentle white noise, and let's begin today's journey together. The quiet brain clues before a stroke. You might think a stroke always begins with something dramatic, a sudden fall, slurred speech, or a frozen face. But for most seniors, the real warning signs arrive not like a thunderclap, but like a whisper. Let me tell you about Harold. He's 74, a retired accountant. Precise. Neat. He came in not because of chest pain or vision issues, but because he kept dropping his car keys. It's probably arthritis, he said casually, but his wife had noticed more. He fumbled when buttoning his shirt. He paused while writing a simple grocery list and forgot how to spell milk. No headache, no dizziness, but something was off. A scan revealed Harold had experienced a mini-stroke, a transient ischemic attack TIA, just days before. We acted quickly, hydration meds, diet monitoring, and he never had a full-blown stroke. But the first clue was coordination, the subtle shift in the body's ability to move smoothly. This is what most people miss. That tiny hesitation in your hand. That weird moment when your teacup shakes ever so slightly. These are neurological tremors, not just old age quirks. Because every movement, lifting a spoon, scribbling a note, brushing your teeth, is orchestrated by your brain. When blood flow becomes sluggish due to dehydration, rising pressure, or sleep-related vascular changes, your brain's fine-tuned motor system is often the first to lag. There's even a term for this subclinical motor mismatch. It means your movements aren't failing, they're just slightly delayed. And in the elderly, this can be a red flag. Think of it as your body's early smoke alarm, and if you ignore it, the fire might not be far behind. In fact, a landmark study in Lancet Neurology found that the first 48 hours after a TIA are the highest risk window for a full stroke. But if treated during that window, your risk drops over 80%. That's the difference between memory and amnesia. Between living independently and needing lifelong care. You don't need medical training to notice something is off. You just need attention and humility. That quiet whisper, "Why did I miss that step?" could be your greatest gift. Because it gives you time. Time to hydrate. Time to seek help. Time to protect your brain. And don't brush it off as just aging. Age brings wear, yes, but not sudden clumsiness. Not forgetfulness wrapped in confusion. That's not wear. That's warning. Another patient, Janice, age 70, told me how she once tried to drink from a mug and ended up dribbling half of it on her chin. I laughed, she said. Thought I was being silly, but it happened again the next day. Then she tripped over nothing. Then her signature began to look shaky. She was fortunate. She spoke up. We tested, and again, early-stage brain ischemia. Preventable, reversible, but only because she didn't ignore the whisper. So if your hand shakes when it shouldn't, if your fingers fumble more than usual, if your pen feels foreign in your hand, don't dismiss it, don't normalize it, because it might be the moment your body is asking you to listen. 2. The morning mistake. That thickens your blood. Let's talk about something so simple, so ordinary that most people never question it. You wake up, stretch a little, maybe glance at your phone, head to the bathroom, brush your teeth, and pour yourself a hot cup of coffee. Sounds familiar, right? But what if I told you that this exact sequence one, so many people over 60 perform every morning, could be quietly thickening your blood, slowing your circulation, and increasing your risk of stroke, all before breakfast? You see, after 6 to 8 hours of sleep, your body is mildly dehydrated. That's not a guess, it's biology. You've lost moisture through your breath and skin, but you haven't replenished anything. Your blood becomes slightly more viscous, like syrup that's been left out too long. This isn't dangerous for a teenager, but for someone over 60, it's a different story. Dehydration thickens the blood. Thick blood moves slower. It increases friction inside your arteries. That raises blood pressure, and it makes clots more likely to form and more likely to travel. What's even more unsettling is that studies have shown low hydration in the early morning is present in up to 48% of first-time ischemic strokes. That's not a theory. That's nearly half of all cases. And yet, we don't drink water. We drink coffee. Now don't worry, I'm not telling you to quit your morning coffee, but your brain doesn't want stimulation first. It wants circulation. And that begins with hydration. Let me tell you about Mr. Klein. He's 82. Lived alone, sharp as ever, always started his day with 2 strong espressos. But last spring, he fainted after standing up too quickly. When he came in to see me, his labs were fine. His pressure wasn't dangerously low, but I asked one question. Do you drink water when you wake up? He looked puzzled. No, I go straight for the coffee. We ran deeper tests. And here's what we found. Morning dehydration combined with caffeine had narrowed his arteries temporarily. Not enough to cause a stroke yet, but enough to cause pre-syncope, which is a warning sign that blood flow to the brain is failing. We added one simple habit, 1 glass of room temperature water before anything else. And guess what? No more fainting. No more dizzy spells. And within weeks, he said, Doc, I feel clearer in the mornings than I have in years. You might wonder why room temperature. Why not ice-cold water to wake you up? Because cold water constricts blood vessels, especially in the throat and stomach. That forces the body into a slight stress response. Warm or room temp water, however, relaxes the vagus nerve and promotes gentle absorption. You don't want to shock your system, you want to support it. And what about people who say, but I'm not thirsty in the morning? That doesn't mean your body doesn't need water. It means your thirst reflex has dulled, something common in aging. Don't wait until you're parched, by then the damage is already creeping in. There's also an emotional layer to this. I had a woman named Clara tell me I always thought starting with water was just a wellness trend like yoga and green smoothies. And then at 67 she had a mini stroke. She wasn't overweight, she didn't smoke, but she skipped water daily and had just added a blood pressure med. One quiet change, one simple glass of water might have made all the difference. Now I want you to imagine something. Tomorrow morning, before anything else, before you brush your teeth, before you glance at a screen, you reach for a glass of warm water. You sip slowly. Your brain begins to wake up gently, not chaotically. Blood begins to move. Cells start to receive oxygen, and you've just lowered your stroke risk for the day before your feet even touch the floor. Not with a pill, not with a workout, just with water. There's even a medical phrase for this plasma volume expansion. It's a fancy way of saying that water thins the blood, improves flow, and makes it easier for your heart to do its job. It's why hospitals give IV fluids first thing to stroke risk patients. Why wait until you're in a hospital? One more story. Ben, a 70-year-old jazz musician, told me, Doc, I don't start my morning until I hit the coffee shop. I asked him to try something for 21 days, water first. Just 1 glass, no other changes. He came back smiling. That tiny habit changed everything. My headaches disappeared. My hands stopped shaking during a rehearsal. I even sleep better. So here's your challenge. Tomorrow morning, choose your brain first. 1 glass of water. Before the noise, before the caffeine, before the world starts asking things of you. It's not flashy, but it's the foundation of everything that follows. 3. The danger of staying still in bed. Too long, let's talk about what happens in that quiet space between waking and rising. You open your eyes, blink a few times, and maybe reach for your phone. Maybe you check the weather scroll through messages or just sit still for a while, not quite ready to move. It seems harmless, gentle even. But for people over 60, stillness after waking can become one of the most dangerous habits of all. The problem isn't the silence, it's the stagnation. When you lie still for hours during sleep, your blood naturally pools in the lower parts of the body. That's not dangerous in itself. Your body is designed for rest. But the moment you wake up, your brain, heart, and muscles expect a signal: we're starting the day. Let's circulate. And if that signal doesn't come, the blood stays where it is. Sluggish, heavy, prone to clot. The term for this is orthostatic hypoperfusion, a fancy way of saying your brain isn't getting the blood it needs when you transition from lying to sitting or sitting to standing. Now imagine being 68. Your veins are no longer as elastic. Your heart works harder to move blood upward. And instead of gently activating circulation, you sit there for 20-30 minutes completely still, just scrolling. What you've created is a vascular bottleneck, a kind of traffic jam in your bloodstream. Let me share something. One of my patients, Denise, age 73, used to do exactly that. She called it her soft start. A cup of tea, her tablet, maybe a crossword, she wouldn't stand up for nearly an hour. She thought she was being kind to herself. Until one morning, standing up caused her vision to go black. She collapsed. No stroke, thankfully, but her blood pressure had dropped too low from lack of movement. Her brain was momentarily starved of oxygen, and that momentary drop is all it takes. Even more dangerously, if a small clot formed during the night, maybe in her leg, from compression or dehydration, suddenly standing or straining could send that clot upward. To the brain, to the lungs, to the heart. That's not being dramatic. That's how morning strokes happen. Hospitals have known this for decades. It's why they get post-surgery patients to move as early as possible, even with assistance. Because the body, especially as it ages, was never designed for long-term stillness. But here's the good news. The fix is simple, gentle, and effective. Before you even sit up in bed, wiggle your toes. Rotate your ankles in slow circles. Flex your calves. Squeeze your fists and stretch your arms overhead. Then when you sit up, do a few neck rolls, shoulder circles. Just 2 to 3 minutes of movement. What you're doing isn't exercise, it's priming your pump. You're sending a signal to your blood vessels. Wake up. Let's go. Another patient, Michael, 70 years old, ex-marathoner, told me he used to feel lightheaded in the mornings even after a good night's sleep. Once he added 90 seconds of bed stretches and one lap around his apartment before coffee, that dizziness vanished. It's like giving my body a chance to catch up to my brain, he said. I love that image, because that's exactly what it is. A transition period. You wouldn't jump into a cold pool without testing the water. So why would you send your aging circulatory system from 0 to 60 without warming it up? A study from the Journal of Gerontology found that seniors who included light movement within 15 minutes of waking had 30% better vascular response compared to those who delayed motion. That means more oxygen to your brain, lower blood pressure spikes, less risk. And yet we still cling to the belief that lounging in bed is restful. It might be for your thoughts, but for your blood vessels, it's a traffic jam. Here's a strange but true fact. Astronauts returning from space suffer temporary circulation problems because they've been floating without gravity, pulling blood downward. What's the first thing NASA does? Gets them moving. Slowly, but immediately. You're not in space, but after 8 hours lying still, your body needs the same kind of grounding routine. So tomorrow morning when you wake up, try this instead. Wiggle, roll, stretch. Sit up with intention. Breathe, smile. Then rise. It's not about rushing. It's about respecting the transition, because your brain, your heart, your muscles, after decades of service, deserve to be eased into the day, not dropped into it. And if all it takes is 3 minutes of gentle motion to prevent a life-changing event, wouldn't that be worth setting your phone down for? 4. Why skipping breakfast isn't noble. After 60. There was a time when skipping breakfast was seen as a form of discipline, a badge of honor. You hear people say it all the time, I'm not hungry in the morning. or I'm doing intermittent fasting. And maybe that works if you're 30 fit and still bouncing back from everything. But after 60, skipping breakfast can become a slow, silent assault on your brain. Let me be clear, I'm not talking about pancakes and syrup or greasy bacon and toast. I'm talking about any breakfast. Just enough to tell your brain you're safe, you're supported, you have fuel to think clearly. Because here's what most people forget. Your brain doesn't store fuel. It needs a constant supply of glucose, and after 8 hours of fasting during sleep, it's running low. Now add in dehydration, a few morning pills, maybe for blood pressure or diabetes, and no food. What do you get? The perfect storm for a brain fog, or worse, a stroke. There's a condition that neurologists quietly call morning mismatch syndrome. It's when seniors wake up, take medication that lowers blood pressure or sugar, and then forget to eat. The body drops into a deficit and the brain feels it first. You feel faint, disoriented, your hands shake, you can't find the right word. You sit down just to rest and maybe you never quite get up the same again. Let me tell you about George, a 69-year-old retired engineer. Brilliant mind, strong will. He believed in routine. Coffee at 6 p.m. at 6:30, then straight to his woodshop. No food until noon. He said fasting kept his mind sharp. But one morning he collapsed while sanding a chair leg. No stroke, thankfully, but a glucose crash that landed him in the ER. He was shocked when the doctor said, "This wasn't about your heart. This was about your fuel." After recovery, we added a habit, a protein-based breakfast. Nothing fancy. Half a boiled egg, 3 almonds, a small piece of toast. Within weeks, George called and said, "I feel steady, like my brain isn't starting the day on fumes." And that's what it comes down to, stability. Fasting might work for the young. Their insulin regulation is tighter, their liver stores are fuller. But in older adults, insulin sensitivity changes. The body doesn't release sugar from the liver as effectively. So when you fast, your brain isn't tapping into a secret reserve, it's being deprived. Add to that the fact that seniors are often on medications that further reduce blood pressure or sugar levels, and skipping breakfast becomes less about health and more about gambling with consciousness. Let me bring you into another story. A woman named Lucia, 72, loved her independence. She cooked, gardened, even volunteered on weekends, but she'd lost her appetite in the mornings. Just didn't feel like eating, she said. Then came the headaches. Then came the confusion while grocery shopping. Then came the stroke. After recovery, she finally said, "I thought not eating was better than eating badly. I didn't know that not eating was just as dangerous." Lucia now starts her day with warm lemon water and a spoon of chia seeds soaked overnight, a small handful of blueberries, a rice cake with almond butter. Just enough to stabilize her morning rhythm, and she hasn't had a single dizzy spell since. You see, your brain doesn't need a feast, but it does need a signal. Breakfast says, "We're not starving. We're not in crisis. You can perform." You don't need a kitchen full of ingredients or an hour to prepare something gourmet. You need 3 bites of something nourishing. Protein, healthy fat, or even complex carbs. Something that tells your body the day has started and I'm ready. Here's what I suggest. Half a boiled egg with a sprinkle of salt, a spoon of Greek yogurt, a slice of banana, 3 soaked walnuts, warm oatmeal with cinnamon. Doesn't matter if you're not hungry, you brush your teeth even when you're not smiling, don't you? Breakfast is hygiene for the brain. There's even a term researchers use now, neuronutritional buffering. It refers to the way certain foods in the morning can protect the brain from hormonal stress, especially cortisol spikes at dawn. Protein and healthy fats help modulate that. They're not just food, they're brain armor. So if you're listening to this and thinking, "But I've skipped breakfast for years and I'm fine," I hear you. But just because something hasn't broken yet doesn't mean it's working well. Longevity isn't about avoiding collapse. It's about avoiding the slow decline that no one notices until it's too late. One final story. Eric, a 76-year-old jazz saxophonist, lively, full of life. But on stage one evening, he froze during a solo. Couldn't remember the key, couldn't find the breath. Not a stroke, but a blood sugar dip from skipping breakfast that morning before travel. Now every morning he takes 10 minutes for himself. Tea toast and a boiled egg. He says it's like giving his brain a handshake before the day begins. Do the same for yours. Because no routine, no fast, no badge of discipline is worth more than the clarity that comes from simply feeding your mind. 5. Stress. Before sunrise. The silent trigger. Now let's talk about something you can't touch or taste, but you can feel it in your chest the moment your eyes open. Stress. Not the dramatic kind where something explodes or you're stuck in traffic. I'm talking about the subtle stress that begins quietly like a slow leak in a tire, a morning headline, an overdue bill on the kitchen table, an email that says urgent, a small argument with your spouse before breakfast. This invisible pressure, when layered on top of an aging nervous system, can be far more dangerous than most seniors realize. Why? Because your body is already waking up in a state of biological tension. Right before dawn, cortisol, the stress hormone, naturally spikes. That's true for everyone. It's your body's way of preparing to face the day. But after 60, your blood vessels are less flexible, your heart muscle takes longer to adjust, and your brain is more sensitive to sudden shifts in pressure. Add stress to that mix, and you're building a storm before your feet even hit the floor. There's a story I can't forget. Mrs. Harding, age 71, widowed, living alone, sharp-minded. Her mornings used to start with news alerts. She'd reach for her tablet and read about war, inflation, crime. Then she'd take her pills, skip breakfast, argue with herself about her grown children not calling. It became a pattern, one she didn't even notice. Until one morning she felt a piercing pain behind her left eye. Her speech slurred briefly. By the time she got to the ER, the doctor said you had a warning shot. A blood vessel in your brain constricted, then relaxed. But next time it might not. She wasn't smoking, she wasn't obese, she wasn't even hypertensive. But she was flooded with cortisol every morning before she even stood up. The body doesn't care if the stress is real or imagined. It responds all the same, with constriction, with raised pressure, with narrowed focus. Over time, that can lead to micro damage in blood vessels. And when those vessels are in the brain, the cost can be irreversible. So what can you do? It starts with creating space between sleep and stress. The first 10 minutes of your day are sacred, not just spiritual, neurological. This is when your brain is the most vulnerable to being hijacked, and also the most primed for healing if you allow it. Instead of reaching for your phone, reach for silence. Breathe. Sit up slowly. Maybe sip warm tea. Look out the window. Greet the day on your terms, not the terms of a headline, a stranger's opinion, or the stock market. A 2015 study followed over 93,000 people for more than a decade and found that high psychological stress in the first 3 hours of the day was linked to significantly higher stroke risk, especially in people over 60, even when they accounted for smoking, diabetes, and weight. But here's what's even more fascinating: the protective power of quiet mornings. Those who reported starting their days with calm, intentional rituals, light stretching, soft music, prayer, journaling, had markedly lower rates of cardiovascular events. Let me tell you about Walter, 75, retired postal worker. Every morning he'd rush through emails, worry about bills, and check the weather with dread. It became a cycle: stress, first food, later movement, last, until he had a panic attack that mimicked stroke symptoms. Scary enough that he changed everything. Now Walter starts each day with a timer set for 15 minutes. No devices, just him, his porch, and the sounds of birds. He says it feels like a handshake between me and the morning. And since then, no attacks, no dizziness. His blood pressure has stabilized. You don't need a fancy mindfulness app. You don't need to become a Zen master, but you do need a buffer. Create a little island of peace before the world comes rushing in. Here are some ideas. Light a candle or incense. Listen to soft instrumental music. Open a window and breathe the morning air. Repeat a calming mantra: I am here. I am safe. This day is mine. Write down 3 things you're grateful for. What matters is not what you do, but how you do it. Slowly, gently, without urgency. Even 5 minutes makes a difference. It signals to your brain, we are not in danger. We are not reacting. We are beginning. Because when you begin your day in reaction, you hand your nervous system over to panic. But when you begin with intention, you anchor yourself to calm, and the body follows. You see people think strokes come from big events, trauma explosions, dramatic collapses, but often they come from small tensions that build up quietly day after day, like rain filling a cracked bucket. Until one morning that bucket tips. Don't wait for the spill. Start with peace. Start with presence. Start with you. 6. Stillness is the real killer, not movement. You've probably heard the advice 1,000 times. Take it easy. Don't overdo it. Rest more. And after 60, that sounds like good, kind guidance. After all, you've spent decades working, raising a family, building a life. You deserve rest. But here's the truth. Nobody tells you stillness is killing more seniors than stress ever could. And I'm not talking about peaceful stillness, the kind you feel when meditating or sitting quietly with a book. I'm talking about inactivity. Long periods of doing nothing physically, especially in the first hour of your morning. You might wake up, pour a cup of coffee, sit at the table, read the paper. Maybe you move from the chair to the couch. Then maybe you watch the news. Before you know it, it's 9 a.m. and you've barely moved at all. It sounds harmless, but it's not. After 60, the veins in your legs become less efficient at pushing blood back toward the heart. Your body becomes more prone to clotting. Your arteries are less elastic, and when blood just sits, when circulation isn't activated, tiny clots can begin to form, especially after a night of dehydration and lowered blood pressure. Doctors call this condition morning hypomobility syndrome, a dangerous period where blood stagnates in the legs, the heart gets less oxygen, and the brain receives a reduced flow. It's often the precursor to morning strokes, especially in seniors who are otherwise healthy. Here's a sobering study: adults over 60 who spent more than 9 hours a day sitting, even if they exercised later, had double the risk of stroke compared to those who broke up their stillness earlier in the day. Why? Because timing matters. What you do in the first hour after waking sets the tone for your entire circulatory system. That's the window when your brain is most vulnerable. And if you spend it still, legs tucked under a blanket, barely moving, you may be telling your body to stay in sleep mode, while your blood thickens and clots prepare to travel. Let me share a story that stayed with me. Samuel, 78, widower, calm soul. Every morning he had a beautiful ritual. Coffee in his recliner, a few chapters of scripture, quiet prayers. He barely moved for the first 90 minutes of his day. It was peaceful. Sacred. Until one morning, while reaching for the remote, he felt a sharp pain in his left temple and collapsed. It was a stroke, caused by a clot that had formed in his leg while he sat and dislodged when he reached sideways. Samuel survived, but he lost partial movement in his right arm, and he never saw it coming. Peacefulness is not the problem. Inactivity is. You don't need to run laps. You don't need a gym membership. You just need to move gently early. Let's reframe what starting your day means. It doesn't begin with screens. It doesn't begin with news. It doesn't even begin with coffee. It begins with movement. Here are 5 ways to build safe motion into your morning right from your bed. Ankle pumps: point and flex your feet 10 times each. Leg stretches. Pull one knee to your chest and hold for 5 seconds. Arm lifts: reach up, stretch, hold your breath for 3 seconds. Neck rolls: 5 circles in each direction. March in place for 1 minute after standing up. These are not workouts. They are invitations to your circulatory system. Wake up. Flow. Let's begin the day together. Even walking to the mailbox or stepping outside barefoot on the porch can activate the kind of muscle contractions that push blood upward, oxygenate the brain, and prevent pooling in your lower body. There's even a beautiful Japanese practice called Radio Taiso, a 2-minute light stretching routine broadcast every morning on national radio. Millions of elderly Japanese perform it daily. And not coincidentally, Japan has one of the lowest rates of age-related stroke and highest rates of healthy longevity in the world. Because movement isn't just about strength, it's about flow. So ask yourself, are your mornings full of life or full of waiting? Another patient. Elaine, 82, told me she used to believe that resting in the morning was easier on the heart. After all, she'd been told all her life not to exert herself too early. But after she added a 5-minute mobility routine each morning, stretches light, toe taps, wrist circles, her daily headaches disappeared. Her balance improved, and her memory got sharper. "I didn't realize I was stalling my own energy," she said. "I thought I was being gentle, but I was actually freezing my flow." It's one of the greatest paradoxes of aging. The more gently you move, the more fiercely your body supports you. So here's what I want you to remember as we close. Don't confuse stillness with serenity. Don't mistake rest for healing. And don't let your mornings become a soft trap of inactivity. Your brain is waiting for the signal. Your blood is waiting to move. And your life is waiting to keep flowing. Because movement is not the enemy. It's the medicine. If you're over 60, your morning routine isn't just a habit, it could be the single most important factor protecting your brain. In this episode, we uncovered the quiet, overlooked ways. Stroke risk builds not through dramatic collapses, but through tiny, everyday moments: skipping water, sitting too long in bed, skipping breakfast, diving into stress, and staying still for hours. The first signs of stroke are often subtle fumbling with buttons, dropping keys, or forgetting how to spell milk. These aren't aging quirks, they're your brain signaling a problem with blood flow. And the hours just after waking are when the body is most vulnerable. Dehydration thickens your blood. Skipping breakfast starves your brain of fuel. Stress spikes cortisol, tightening already fragile arteries. And worst of all, stillness. Prolonged inactivity allows blood to pool, clots to form, and danger to quietly rise, especially in seniors whose circulation is already compromised. But here's the good news. The solution isn't extreme. 1 glass of warm water, 2 minutes of gentle movement, a small protein-rich snack, 5 minutes of calm, a few stretches before you leave the bedroom. These small rituals are not wellness trends, they are survival tools. After 60, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to be present. Listen to your body. Protect your flow. And remember, the greatest health changes don't begin in the doctor's office. They begin in your morning choices. So take a deep breath. Tomorrow is waiting for you with peace, clarity, and strength if you meet it with care.